So a little bit about me. People don't know sort of my backstory, and I suppose why I love teaching this stuff. But I fell into the Salesforce world around 2010. I was running a non-profit that had sat with the Salesforce licenses for a couple of years without really knowing what Salesforce was or could do for us. And then I saw a demo through another non-profit and how they used it, and I was like, oh wow, now I get it. And I will touch on the value of a really good demo, because if you need to get people's buy-in for them to understand it, a demo is a very important thing to be able to show. So it was that demo that made the switch for me, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Okay, so I implemented it for my non-profit. That enabled me to grow my non-profit from 100k to 1.4 million in a year, went from 4 staff to 40 staff. And it was quite instrumental in us allowing us to have an organization that could be compliant, that could report easily to funders, that could demonstrate our work, that we could use in a marketing database to contact people quickly. And all of those things were attributes to that growth. So I became very passionate about Salesforce, and I also did, during that running the non-profit as a CEO, I also did my advanced admin and consultancy skills course that they ran at the time to really understand the system, and I built it all myself. I didn't use an SI. I went through the training and built it, and I just really enjoyed that process, went through a learning curve with that. But that kind of got my appetite for going, I want to help other non-profits with Salesforce. So having gone down the route of then being a freelance Salesforce consultant, I think with every project I realized that I was missing a sort of a secondary skill set. And the key things that I'll go through, and a lot about this book really is the book is really focused on the skill sets of business analysis, agile project management, and change management in many different ways. It's those softer professional skill set that this book is focused on, rather than the technical side. And it's those elements that I was like, okay, I need to build those sides up. So I invested in £11,000 worth of training when I did the training. Our training is not that much at Supermums, but it was very comprehensive training, and I understand like the disciplines behind it, and obviously then applied that. And my approach to applying these on projects allowed me to grow a Salesforce consultancy. So I went from me as a freelance Salesforce consultant to 20. We had 350 clients with 700 projects. We had a 60% repeat and referral rate, and that was because of our vigor with projects and our approach to projects. And I think if you deliver a really good approach and you have a good methodology, you win projects because people trust you and you do a good job. So, I was really proud of that progress. We won the EMEA Partner of the Year award, and we had some, such an amazing learning experience. So I delivered personally 100 of those projects. The rest I oversaw as a senior leader and business development person of that consultancy. So I had oversight over all of them, and could easily see where things went wrong if those practices weren't followed. And every time if a project went wrong, it was because the client stroke consultant, those rigors of business analysis, change management, agile project management weren't followed as the way they should be, which is only when a project would go wrong. And so I'm a big fan of making sure that people understand the value and the importance of these attributes in a project. So having run the consultancy, then focused Supermums, grew out of that. So Supermums supports completely newbies to Salesforce with our admin and marketing cloud course. But then we've trained a lot of existing Salesforce professionals in our consultancy skills course. And then we place experienced and emerging talent into job roles in consultancies and end customers and ISVs through our recruitment arm. And we do this globally. So a third of our trainees are in the USA, and 2/3 are across EMEA. So we've got like a really big spread. So that's what I spend my time doing now, is really teaching and educating as opposed to being hands-on with projects. But I really enjoy that. I really enjoy being able to give back and focus my time. So all of this learning has been compiled within this book, which is Become a Super Salesforce Consultant. So there is a QR code there, but I've put the link in the chat, and it's due to come out on the 14th of November. There's a VIP list for any of you where you can access special benefits and discounts if you sign up before that. So we'll be releasing all that information to you. And yeah, super excited to be able to bring this book out, and it will give you, say, the more in-depth knowledge of what we're going to share with you tonight. So I was really delighted that Zara, the CEO of Salesforce UK, I don't know if many of you know her in the States, but she gave a foreword for the book, saying it was a fantastic methodology to help customers through the digital transformation process. So it's very special to kind of get her endorsement and support for the book, and she's going to buy a bulk order for their team at Salesforce, which is equally amazing as well. So let's get started with this about joining me to become a Super Salesforce Consultant. I said, are you up for playing Salesforce bingo? I think I can see you in the chat still, so we should be able to see if we've got any hands up as we go. So kicking off, really, I think, you know, as I've sort of created that premise around this session, is as consultants, I always say to people as I start a discovery workshop, is my goal is to make you happy. You know, that's what I always felt about the job. And we sort of outline a big promise to customers when we go in. You know, we say that we're going to solve their pain points, we're going to take boring admin off their desk, we're going to help them achieve and exceed their performance targets. We want to help managers sleep better at night and relax on holiday. Personally, I like, you know, that personalized connection with people, because if you can make people's lives better on an individual basis, it helps really build those relationships with the stakeholders. You can help the business leaders achieve their business goals, you know, obviously working with those executive teams. You want to coach people to feel empowered with new technology. That's a big thing about this, because you're going to have people that are scared, excited, nervous. You know, so you've got to coach them along on this journey to use this brand new technology. We want to add value to their business, and we want to make them smile due to improved productivity. And again, a bit around the personal note there, I think, you know, again, it was quite special to sort of feel like people said, you know, this automation means that I can get home to put my kid to bed at 5 o'clock, or not have to work weekends to do reports all weekend. You know, that was the sort of difference that you can make to people's lives by implementing the technology. And I think one, you know, knowing that is a great, that's your business analysis bit, is really understanding how am I going to help make people happy. If you understand that at a personal level and at a business level, you know that you're doing your business analysis correctly. And so I think that's always a great way to start a workshop. But with all of this, we are setting really high expectations. And so it's about, you know, how do we make this a reality and do a best job? And that's really why I wrote the book, is to help people mind the gap, really, because I think, you know, there are rookie mistakes we can make. And these rookie mistakes will happen if we aren't trained in Agile Project Management, change management, and business analysis as a hat trick. You know, these are the hat trick skills that you need to have. Some of the, after all the risks, after if any project went wrong, there was a reason why. And I compiled a checklist of 20 risks where a project would go wrong. And that became then our risk mitigation strategy with a client, because we'd say to them, right, before we start this project, we want to go through these risks to make sure that you're aware of them, but two, that we've mitigated them as much as possible. Because if you can inform them about these risks up front and have those honest conversations and do a risk assessment, that's a great way to start a project. That's a key part of project management. So some of the example risks here would be that there's not a clear business case to generate buy-in, that you're not onboarding customers properly, that you're not appraising and mitigating the risk, which is what we just talked about, that you're not briefing a client ahead of their Salesforce design workshop, so they come unprepared and not ready, which then, you know, causes delays on the projects, increases the design budget and everything else. You might not ask the right questions in the design workshop, which means that you know, key elements get missed out of the design and the overall process, which means then the product isn't fit for purpose. You might not make time for non-functional requirements. Again, they often might get left out of the list and the focus is put on the functional requirements. There might be no documentation, and so nothing has been agreed in writing, nothing signed off properly. The team don't get left with anything, so there's no oversight. That can be a mistake. You might not have an approach to engaging people on the project. So they talk about how you engage people who are nervous, scared, excited, angry even. You've got all these different emotions in the room, and I have seen that on all my different projects. How do you engage all those different personalities? If you haven't got a background in change management, all those team facilitation skills and how to anticipate that and facilitate it, that's a risk. You might not train people properly. So if you're not thinking about the different learning styles that people have and delivering what I call the gold training strategy, then you might miss a whole load of people out, and you might train people against one learning style and miss a whole load out. So do you have that comprehensive training strategy in mind? And then finally, not helping customers set up a center of excellence. Who's left holding the baby? If there isn't a center of excellence set up, then the project or the system can be left in a state where it's not managed properly or not governed, or there's no budget allocated because there's no clear tracking of ROI. So there's lots of risks, but it's certainly very much something that can be mitigated, managed, overlooked. If you're really clear on what all the risks are, then that's the first thing. If you know what they are, you can mitigate them and make sure that you've ticked them. I'm a big fan of checklists. Everything on my course is checklists, strategies, questions. I'm just here's your plug and play project management toolkit. Just because when you've learned all this stuff and you've seen it, you kind of know what everything is that you need to ask. So this is what this A to Z guide is. It's really about minding the gap. So first bingo question is, there's 3 questions here really, is have you had stakeholders that have said to you, what do you mean I can't have all of the requirements? They're expecting the 100 things, not maybe the 50 things that you expected. Has anybody put your hand up if you had any of that? Yeah, a few on there. Have you had somebody that says, if I spend $1 million on the CRM, what benefits will I see? They're being quite inquisitive about that, and they want to see the ROI. So that's another common thing. So and then the final one is but I don't want to stop using my spreadsheets, and they're wedded to their spreadsheets and they don't want to move. I've got nods there. Debbie's nodding. Anybody else had that one? So there's some of the common sort of challenges that you might get. Now, those 3 challenges can be completely tackled with a comprehensive approach to the hat trick skills. And nicely, this is where I think the A to Z is a chronological order of the project, but ABC is perfect, right? Agile Project Management, BA, Change Management. My 3 core things are the ABC. It felt like this was the perfect kind of menu. So Agile Project Management, I strongly recommend the DSDM methodology for leading a Salesforce project. Scrum is the next level down. Scrum is about managing a technical team and getting requirements done. DSDM methodology is that high level that looks at the business objectives, the business value, and manages what requirements get done when in line with the business value. And it is about keeping projects on time and in budget, which Scrum isn't. So Agile Project Management, there are different methodologies. For leading a Salesforce project, there's a big emphasis on DSDM, which is what I focus on and I was taught in and teach. So that allows you to prioritize requirements with the customer. You would train them in DSDM methodology and do a proper training session with them so they understand the rigor around that, they understand the methodology, which they can use against any other project they have. And then that would allow you, as I say, to prioritize requirements to be in time and in budget. So when they have the wish list with 100 things on it, they understand they can't have all of those things, and actually they have to shortlist and prioritize to get it back down to the 50% of the list that they need. So it's a fantastic methodology to hold people in that space and to say train them in an internationally recognized methodology that is renowned for technology projects. With business analysis covers everything from managing the executive sponsorship team, having a really good business case with tangible return on investment indicators so that you understand that. But it's also all the detailed documentation that goes with gathering the non-functional requirements, the functional requirements, and documenting all of that with process maps, with requirements logs, with testing scripts, and kind of really understanding what is needed there. There's about, I think I talk about a number now, I think there's 8 or 9 different documentation types that you would sort of track. And by documents, I don't necessarily mean a Word document. It could be a system where you do process maps, for example, but it's a way of documenting it somewhere in some form to share with the client. And so the client or the stakeholders you're working with, you know, everybody can see everything, and everything is documented about what you're building. But it's also a range of elicitation techniques you do. That might then, the elicitation techniques you do would depend on the culture of the organization, which leads me to change management. So change management doesn't stand alone over here. Change management is the way that you deliver business analysis. It's the way you deliver agile project management, the way that you facilitate stakeholders. It's like the layer on top of those things that people miss. And with change management, it's about understanding the culture of the organization, because the way that you approach business analysis in a certain culture will be different to others. There's 4 different types of culture organization we talk about in change management. The way you train people takes a lot on board around change management. So the different learning styles of visual, kinesthetic, audio, digital, audio. Are you delivering training? It's not just training with the learning styles, it's the way you deliver a demo, the way you deliver the design workshops, the way you deliver your training, all the way through learning styles. Because if you're missing one, people will not get engaged and will switch off. We also talk about, you know, I'm just giving some example methods here, like people seeing and hearing things 3 times in 3 different ways. Change management is very much about the communication strategy that you have all the way through the project. And the communication strategy is telling people why it's happening, what's happening, how it's happening, telling them in 3 different ways, making sure that you're engaging different audiences and also navigating those different stakeholders, which I will come on to again. So change management, you know, has a lot embedded in it. I talk about a 4-pillar approach to change management, which has got very specific methodologies in it, is what I teach. So those are the key sort of hat tricks. And then you've got DevOps. Now, if you're not technically delivering on this project, you don't necessarily need to know how to use maybe the DevOps systems, but you need to know and understand how DevOps features and to manage that as part of leading a Salesforce project. So GearSet do have a free platform for learning DevOps. It's called Launchpad. And you can do certifications on there. So I'm going to share with you some of the free tools throughout this slide deck as well. So GearSet have their Launchpad thing. So the next question is, have you been in a situation with your stakeholders where people are saying things are feeling a little bit crazy and unclear on what needs doing? Does everybody feel a little bit out of whack? Like, okay, what needs doing now? Pretty much, you know, there's a lack of project management there to some degree. Has anybody felt like that? Yeah, so we've got a few pluses there. So the next sort of section, if you like, is I'm going to talk about forming a team. And this is about creating the right culture, structure, and guidance to have a high-performing team. Now, I think what's important generally to think about a team is a Salesforce team is like a pop-up team. You've got lots of different people coming together for a very specific project, and quite often this might be on top of their normal day job, or it might be, you know, a consultant managing this alongside other projects they're managing. So the reality is it's a group of people coming together for the very first time who quite often may have not worked together before. You know, everything's new. It's not their main job. It's not their main focus. And so, as I say, they're sort of managing us on top of everybody else. So you've got to kind of imagine the situation you're in. Now, E is about evaluating the opportunity. If you're going for a job interview or you're pitching for a piece of work, you want to ask them as many questions as they're asking you. You should be interviewing them. I've got 27 questions that you should be asking in a job interview to gauge whether it's the right environment to go into, whether that environment is, you know, ready, ripe, and a good fit for a Salesforce project. You want to assess the risks before you even go in. So I would do that as a consultancy, and walk away from ones where it isn't a right fit. You want to evaluate whether it's even going to be a good environment for a team, or for you to be part of that team, or to lead a project, because you don't want to lead something that's going to set up to fail. So you want to evaluate that. F is about the 4 roles of an awesome admin. I talk about, and this will be the next book, how to become a super Salesforce admin. I have a download that talks about the 4 roles of a Salesforce admin, which encompasses 40 tasks. And those 40 tasks are structured around what you would do on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis. So we kind of got like a really coherent plan about how you should be working. So it's really useful to have that in a team environment, because then you kind of go, right, who's, in terms of managing the system going forward, and this is managing it rather than leading and implementing it, but who's going to do these jobs, and sort of making sure that you've got a really good team in place to manage the system going forward. Similarly with G, governance, you want a really good governance structure, which is important during the implementation, but also again for the ongoing management. And your governance is the center of excellence. It's having a key executive sponsor. The key executive sponsor knows what their roles and responsibilities are over and above giving money. So I talk about the what their job is, what's expected of them, what the job is of the center of excellence, what that needs to look like. It also talks about the ROI indicators. How do you create a business case, and how do you measure the ROI, and to make sure the governance have all of that to account. We then go into hiring a team and talking about what the different job roles might be, and how you might interview people and how to pull that together. So that's about hiring a team. I is about identifying and upskilling champions. So again, I've coached organizations where they're like, oh, Joe, Sam, things have all put their hands up and want to be it. And then they've got them in a room, but there haven't been any clear job specs. There hasn't been a clear expectation about what's expected of them. The managers feel a bit threatened in that they think, well, is this person going to be taken away from my team, and what's their job? So there has to be a very carefully considered approach to who are your champions? Do they have the right skills and attributes? How's it going to impact their job? How will they be rewarded for this job? And to formalize it, in a way that everybody knows what's expected of them, and you get that right buy-in. So you could have some champions that are going to be delegated admins, or they could just be, they could be BAs, or they could just be trainers. And it might differ per company, or their roles, or their responsibilities, or even what team they're in. So there's a whole section on champions that needs to be thought about. And then finally, you've got job roles and responsibilities. And this is really looking at how do you create a performing team. Some of these disciplines are relevant to setting up any team, but it's talking about, how do you set out the parameters of people's roles? How do you form a good team working structure? If those, people are questioning it, we talk about, team development, that you might go through a forming, norming, storming and performing process where, everybody thinks they know what they're doing. And then there's a little bit of conflict and stress because actually it's not quite working the way they thought, and people are negotiating and questioning. Then you move to norming. And then you move to performing when you get there and everything's working really well. So we sort of take you through that process. So that's that section. I'm just going to grab a drink of water. So we've got the team on it. Hopefully it's performing state as you go through. Next, we move on to maybe a situation where somebody says no one uses the old CRM. Why not? I don't know. And you've got this situation where nobody really knows what the legacy issues are. Has anybody been in that situation before? Any hands? So with this issue, then you kind of like trying to unpick, because the thing is, if they've got a CRM, whether it's Salesforce or not, you've got to really understand why they haven't used the system before, to work out, like, we're going to put a brand new one in, why are people going to use this, and if you didn't use that? And so you've got to understand all the legacy issues. So you know, you've got your team of people, great. The next thing to do is evaluate the business need. Why are they investing in a CRM? What is the value of it to them? So K would be, let's look at the KPIs for return on investment, get them really tangible, measurable, achievable, so they're smart. And so I give lots of different indicator examples in my book, and sort of talk about what they might look like. And quite often I find that you have to put those examples in front of the client and the stakeholders, because it will be very hard for them to imagine them and just tell you without some guidance. So you want to kind of upward manage and upward educate them and say, right, you know, here's a whole set of KPIs for a typical return investor. Which of these feel like they might apply to this project? And then you go, okay, great, well, let's take those out. So you want to be really clear on the KPIs. L is about legacy issues. So I talk about NLP logical levels, which is a great methodology. It was really spot on, to be honest. There's like 6 different layers to the NLP logical levels, which talks about where problems arise in this type of situation. There's actually another one that I've added to it, which is around data. And actually Validity, who are on the slide deck, have a free data analysis tool. So if people don't trust the system because the data's, or they don't trust the data in the system, you can use a tool like Validity to sense check the data and look at that data quality. But with legacy issues, say the sort of 6 areas that I always see. So if I've gone into a project where they don't use the CRM, I would use this methodology to say, right, let's just talk through these 6 areas and identify which of these 6 areas it might be. Again, you're educating the client about where some of the problems might exist, rather than just asking them, like, where do the problems exist? Because they might not really have the intel to tell you, you know, in that way, or they might not realize that's a problem. Whereas if you've got your little checklist of things where they can go wrong, it really kind of helps you have an informed conversation as we go through. Alicia said, can you please repeat the name of the methodology you mentioned with the key areas? So NLP logical levels. So NLP is coaching. So my background is coaching before I got into Salesforce. And you wouldn't, the coaching tools and techniques massively are so valuable in Salesforce projects. And so the NLP logical levels, I have a video on this on my Supermum's YouTube channel. But it just, you know, it's a fantastic methodology to look at where problems lie in like an adoption of a CRM. So it's amazing. And then M is around mentoring stakeholders. So you're mentoring stakeholders throughout this process. So we at Supermums, we teach people how to be mentors, because we have mentors, Salesforce professionals mentoring all of our trainees. And so we talk about the value of mentoring, the approach that you would take to mentoring, and how you can mentor people through this process, particularly people that are nervous and, you know, feel quite scared about new technology. N is about navigating stakeholders. So evaluating the business need as you're doing, this is all the business analysis process, right? So, you know, I talk about those hat trick skills, but all of this is business analysis, is you're kind of taking people through this process, asking them questions and mentoring them on the journey. Navigating stakeholders, I talk about various change management methodologies here. So this is how, like, you know, who are our different stakeholders? Who are the resistors? Who are the blockers? Who are the champions? Who are the sleepers? So I talk about those 4 different groups. And if you've got those 4 different groups, you need to do a stakeholder analysis, understand who they all are, and apply different methods to engage those groups in this process. So again, it's a very scientific approach, methodology that you can take to projects if you know the tools and the structures, rather than just like launch in there without any clear plan. So with navigating stakeholders, it's like that stakeholder analysis, it's your different elicitation techniques, it's the culture of the organization, you know, and working out which way to go. Because if it's a machine type culture, you need to elicit in a very certain way and sort of have a plan for business analysis that is aligned to a machine-led organization. Whereas if it's more of an organism type organization, you would do business analysis in a different way and approach things in a different way. So understanding that is really, really valuable. because you can't just go in and say, well, I've done it like this on this project, I'm just going to do it like this on another project. You kind of have a different approach for those. O is about org analysis. So org analysis is where you can analyze the org and see what's been going on in there. I have a free health check document that people can download off our website. It's also in the book, a part of our resources pack in our book. So with org analysis, it gives you like the way to check it all. Hubble Diagnostics is also a free tool that you can use to do an org analysis, and it tells you what's going on in that org. So if you need to analyze any of your orgs, Hubble Diagnostics is there for you. P is project tools. So having great project management tools, communication tools, making sure that all your team, there's a way of documenting everything that I've talked, we talked about documenting business analysis. Is a way of documenting all of that and sharing it with everybody is really important as part of this evaluating the business need as you go. So that's the next section. I don't know if any questions are coming up now. I'm happy to answer anything as we go through. So moving on to the next section is you might have questions come up about how do I use Salesforce again? You've just delivered training and like people are like scratching their head. So I don't know if anybody's been in that situation where somebody's like just completely got confused about the training. But that can be something that's definitely come up if they haven't got it. So within this section, I talk about preparing for rollout, and it's a strategy to empower users to embrace the new technology. So the first thing around this is quality testing, and Provar is a great app for quality testing. That's one of our partners. So you want to make sure that before you deliver a system out to people and roll it out, that it's been tested, that there's not going to be issues with it when you roll it out, because that's the worst way of losing confidence quickly. R is about running a great demo. So you want to be really good at with a demo. You want to be using all the business case narrative all the way through, not just showing the system, but talking about the business value and the business benefits and the benefits to the people around the room when you run a great demo. I was trained through Salesforce. I used to deliver demos all the time when I was, part of the consultancy on the sales, running like the sales team. So you want to be running a really great demo and know how to do that. S is about selling Salesforce. So as a Salesforce consultant, you need to sell Salesforce to every single person. So you need to think about that sales methodology. And you might not naturally think about, I'm not a salesperson, but the reality is sales is about making people happy and selling something to them that's going to be valuable to them, because that's the way that you're going to engage them. So again, all of this is sort of change management practices, but it's about how do I sell Salesforce? What are the key things that I need to be thinking about, and how would I do that? And then you've got T, which is the training strategy. So as I mentioned, you've kind of got the gold strategy, training strategy, which looks at different learning styles and the whole raft, I suppose, of training provisions that you could offer. I think it's always the best approach as a consultant is to explain to your stakeholders, this is what a goal strategy looks like. This is everything it should include if we are going to maximize adoption, and hand that to them. And then if they want to reduce it, down to less than that due to budget and everything else, then, that's on their shoulders, that might hit adoption rates. But then they've made that decision and you've delivered to them what would be the best budget and the best composition of things. So the training strategy, is something that you want to be able to deliver on as part of it. And then so once you've delivered the training, you then get to this point of, going, okay, we've trained them, they're off on the system, but then you've got this big question of, is anybody actually using the system? And this whole point of embedding the system. So have any of you ever been in that situation where you're kind of wondering if anybody's using the system post rollout? Hands up. So with this, I talk about embedding Salesforce, and this is about having a strategy for enthusing users to use Salesforce every day. It quite often gets overlooked. you know, because you kind of think, oh, my job is finished after training, and then nothing else really gets done. So U is for user adoption. So you want to be really clear on what good adoption KPIs look like, so you can monitor that with a dashboard. Improved Apps has a free user adoption tool that you can install, and it gives you a free dashboard. So that can be really useful to install in any of your orgs where you want to measure user adoption, and it's that big brother of looking at exactly who's logging in and using what. It's amazing. So you want really good user adoption KPIs though, you know, what does it look like, and sort of track that. And also think about how you embrace it. So I talk about the stick and carrot approach. You know, how do we improve compliance and business rules and enforce change? Obviously, you kind of want more the carrot though, where they're, you know, if you've done all the other bits I've talked about right, you will have excited people to use Salesforce. You don't need to then push them with a stick, right? Because they're all really excited by it because you've done the change management bit right. So, you know, user adoption, you know, hopefully is sort of worked on throughout the project, but then you need to monitor it. V is about value assessment. So 3 months, 6 months after the rollout, you want to then start looking at, you know, well, based on the ROI and the KPIs, have we made a shift? Some of those things you might be able to measure straight away because there's maybe automation, so you're closing deals quicker, or people are paying quicker, your debt ratio's gone. Some of those you could immediately see a shift in, whereas some things might take longer to have a fruition, like 6 to 12 months. But you can start to value it because you want to see and demonstrate that up to the governance and show there's business impact. As a Salesforce consultant, you need to demonstrate your value, and sort of track that, and that's your trailblazer story. And then W is wrapping up. So wrapping up is your offboarding strategy. It's about making people feel, you know, it's sort of a checklist, sorry, of things you need to think about when you're offboarding people, so they feel comfortable holding the baby after you've walked out. They know what to do with the system. It is, I just think it's so much like you've got this baby going, oh my God, nobody gave me an instruction plan of what to do. And there's, you know, the nurse has gone, like, what do I do? Like, that is the graphic I've put in the book. You know, because unless you kind of give them, you know, good sort of training resources, they know where to go for user groups, they know how to find Trailhead and use Trailhead. You know, there's a whole list of checklists of things I've got in there that is about like offboard a customer successfully with all these things, so they know where to go and how to do it. So that's your embedding Salesforce. And then we've got the final section, which is, you know, how did the project go? And, you know, getting that feedback. And it was really interesting running a consultancy, because it's almost like people would shy away from this to start with. They were like, didn't want to go back and ask almost. They were nervous or worried. And then when they started doing it and getting great feedback, they were like, got addicted to it, because we used to get CSAT scores as a consultancy. And then there was this big competitive thing about how many CSATs they could get back and what the scores might be every week. And it completely switched their mental thing about it, because it gave them that high. So don't ever be scared for asking for feedback, you know, even if it's a case coming in, like, you know, if you had a support desk and a case is coming in, you want to ask for feedback. Well, how did that go? You know, was it good? Because that makes you feel like you did a good job. So with the X-ray, I did find something for X. The X-ray is kind of looking back at all this A to Z and going, how did we do on each of these points throughout the project? And sort of self-evaluating yourself, because I think, you know, over the 10 years of being a consultant, you know, every project to go, how do we do better? You know, and that's why I created all these tools and templates all the time, because I was like, okay, we need a business analysis script for this. We need a risk mitigation strategy. We need, you know, we need these tools and templates to mind the gap next time. So doing the X-ray allows you to see how and what you need to do to improve. It also means that you might get really great feedback that gives you just such a positive boost of confidence that it helps you understand where your zone of genius is. So I don't want to jump to Z just yet, but your why, you know, moving through, if you do your X-rays with why, then your career path, you then get really clear on which way you want to go. And in that section, I talk about, you know, how you can double your salary, what are the different ways to do that, how you might then evaluate what you're really good at, and there's a free quiz in there for you to do that. And then we've got your zone of genius. So your zone of genius would be to start sharing, like I have with this book. What is it that you love talking about? What is your zone? Is it working in a certain industry vertical? Is it about working on certain types of projects, like non-profit projects? Finding your zone of genius and then being able to share that with other people through speaking at user groups, speaking at Dreamforce, writing, being a guest on a podcast, having your own podcast. Having your zone of genius is a thing that's then going to help you get those promotions. It helps you give back. It makes, it just helps other people. And I think that's the biggest sort of attribute of the Salesforce Ohana is it's so nice to see so many people sharing and giving back, and that element. And you don't have to do that, but knowing your zone of genius also, as I say, can get you that promotion in the workplace or make you the departmental lead for something. And that's what makes you become a super Salesforce consultant, is kind of being a specialist at something, whether that's internally in your company as a self-employed consultant, or speaking and sharing all this content elsewhere. So that's my A to Z. I hope there's been some takeaways. I'd love to know what any takeaways you've had in the chat. Any questions you've got, let me know. I'm super thankful to all our supporters. There's some amazing free tools that our partners have got that are just perfect for this sort of narrative and what I've talked about. So I say that the link for the book is in the chat. But I did that in 20 minutes at Dreamforce. I was definitely chatting longer this time. But thank you for choosing the session or joining us for the session today. And I wish you every success as a super Salesforce consultant. So thank you as part of having me today.